In defending yourself, you'll need to use all of your senses. The most common used sense is someone's eyesight. Your sense of hearing can also be very important. Once I was walking on a sidewalk and could hear many people coming around a corner. I could not see around the corner. When I turned the corner, they were about 20 feet away from me and still coming directly at me. There were 6 of them. I recognized the leader of the pack as a well-known felon. I was aware of his involvement in many armed robberies and raping children, among other crimes. By the time I saw them, they were already on me. The leader immediately produced a knife and placed it against my throat. The rest of the gang surrounded me. The leader said he would cut my throat. I had no doubt that he would. He was an extremely violent person. I had seen him delight in hurting others before. I had no doubt that he would kill me. There was one crazy thing that saved me. One member of the gang said he knew me. He told the leader I was on the baseball team of one of their friends. He said not to cut my throat because his friend needed me to help win their games. Another time I missed a ground ball during a ball game. This same thug came onto the field and was going to beat me up for missing the ball. That time another one of his friends intervened and stopped him from beating me. Earlier in my life, I had enjoyed playing sports, but after some incidents like the above mentioned, I didn't care to play anymore. I remember being on a baseball team and decided to quit just before a championship game. I told a friend of mine that I was afraid of some of the people who hung around the ball games. I told him that I believed they would beat me up. My friend said, hang in there for the championship game. He said there were other thugs on my team side who would prevent the bad ones from beating me up. I stayed and we won the championship. However, I do not care anything about watching sports these days as an adult. When I was young, I was not afraid of the dark. I do have an interesting story about this, though. When I was about 10, I had to use the bathroom. I went in the bathroom and turned the light on. As soon as I closed the door, I had this feeling something evil was watching me. I immediately turned off the light, but did not leave the bathroom. I did my business as fast as I could and got out of the bathroom. This is the only time in my life I felt like this. There was a front page story on our town's newspaper the next day. The story was that 3 dangerous convicts from San Quentin had escaped the night before. That night they stole a car 6 houses from my house. Was someone really looking in the window at me? Here's another story on using your senses. I recently read where a lady came home from work. When she went into her bathroom, she smelled a horrible odor. As she opened her closet door, a transient jumped out and tried to rape her. This is another good example of using your senses. If something doesn't look, sound, or smell right, you should back out of the area immediately. If an event is traumatic enough, your senses can shut down. This phenomenon happened to me. I might also call this episode airing my family's dirty laundry. This is also a good example of how violence can happen at family events. I have 2 stepsisters and they both had husbands. Both husbands have since died, but at the time this happened they were both alive. One of the husband's family had a history of mental illness. My mother had bought a new house and it needed painting before she could move in. My mother, stepsisters, their husbands, and I were painting my mother's house. We sat down to have lunch. I noticed that my brother-in-law was acting peculiar. He took a slice of tomato about a 1/4 inch thick and began pouring salt on it. He kept pouring salt on it until there was a 1/4 inch of salt across the tomato. My mother made the remark that her doctor told her to cut down on her salt intake. I did not see anything remotely offensive about the remark. At that instant, I saw my brother-in-law throw the tomato slice at my mother's head. I immediately turned to look at him. The second I looked at him, I saw his eyes rolled back in his head. All I could see was the whites of his eyes. If you have never seen this phenomenon, I would not blame you to doubt what I saw. It was the most fantastic sight I have ever seen. I was unaware of it, but I froze looking at him. Before I knew what had happened, my mother pulled me by the arm out of the house and we were on the sidewalk in front of the house. It was as if I had been unconscious. At that point she said that he told her he was going to kill her and me. My hearing had shut down and I did not hear a word until she told me that. We got in my mother's car and drove away. After about 2 hours, she called back home and asked my stepsister if it was safe to return. My stepsister said no. I know most people would say, why did not she call the police? My mother always walked in eggshells around her daughters and would go to extremes to not offend them. 2 hours after the first call, she called home to see if it was safe to return. My stepsister said it was okay to return. As soon as we walked in the door, my other stepsister and her husband hurriedly left. The stepsister with the crazy husband said that she also had to leave. She had left, and then the crazy brother-in-law stepped out of the back bedroom. You could see that he was still insane. He walked around our living room for a while, then he went out and walked around in front of our house for about 20 minutes. I believe he was deciding whether or not he should kill us. After a while, he left in his car. I tell you this story so you will remember not only strangers could be a threat to you, but sometimes members of your family.